Friends, whether you are watching this live or you are watching it in a replay, I am glad you are here. My name is Jonathan. I am a family therapist and I am an addictions counselor. And I wanted to just talk with you a little bit tonight because I've gotten several comments, I've gotten several messages this week about the same thing. And I got to thinking, if there are a few people who are asking the same thing, then there are dozens, hundreds, thousands more who are wondering the same thing. And that is what the theme of this talk is: why they pretend nothing is wrong. I'm talking about people in addiction. I'm talking about people with life controlling problems that make you feel like you're going crazy because clearly something is wrong. Their health is failing, their relationships are failing, their jobs are failing, life is falling apart. And they're telling you everything's fine, everything's okay, right? When you know that's not the case. Well, I'm here to tell you, friend, you are not going crazy. There is not something wrong with you. There is something much more happening with that addicted person. And we call that denial. And I want to explain what denial is, right? It's that moment where you're looking someone in the eye and you know it's not right. You know things aren't okay, but they're looking you dead in the eye and they're saying, I'm fine. Everything's okay. And there's lots of excuses. Maybe they're even turning it around on you. You have the problem. You're the one that's going crazy, right? And they try to project that back on you. Uh, that's what we call denial and projection. I'm going to deny my part, project it onto you. You might know what I'm talking about. It hurts, it's painful, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about why that denial exists and what is going on there and what you do when you are in a relationship, when you care about someone, when you love someone who is struggling with an addiction. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when they're at that point of denial, and to the extent that that denial is really strong, they're in a pretty bad place, right? And so that's what we want to understand. Hey there, welcome for joining. I'm just giving a little talk here, and then I'm going to open up to any questions that anyone has. But the topic here is about denial. When you care about somebody, when you love someone, when you are in a relationship with somebody who is struggling with an addiction, but they're pretending, they are saying everything is fine, everything is okay. That's what we're talking about here. So feel free, like I said, to write some questions and even comment afterwards. If you're watching this on replay, send a comment. I will do this again and we will talk about it. So I just want to give you a couple of stories to give you some examples. And the reason I want to give you these stories is I want to let you know that this has happened to so many people, that you aren't crazy. You are not alone. You are not the only one who has experienced this. I'll tell you a story that pops in my head quite often when I think about denial. There was this gentleman that I was working with, and he was clearly struggling with an addiction. He was just like this far from being hopeless, like everyone in his life giving up on him. He was uh, struggling with alcohol and other substances, and it was really bad, and it was very clear. But he's in my office, and he's looking me right in the face, and he's saying, everything's fine. He's under control. There is no problem. And this dude was convincing. He's looking at me saying, everything's fine. So for whatever reason, I had to get up and go out of my office, and then I just had this like sense, like something's not right in my office. And I turned around and I walked back in there, only to see this guy just chugging my hand sanitizer. He had taken the top off and he's just drinking it down. And for those of you who don't know, that stuff is primarily alcohol. It has this other stuff that will mess you up, and the type of alcohol, it's very, very, well, it just wrecks your system. but it does work. And when someone's drinking your hand sanitizer, it's pretty obvious they're having a problem. Things are worse. So, and right there was a moment of reality. He's telling me everything's fine. He's looking me right in the face, and then I turn around and he grabs this hand sanitizer and chugs it. So you might be wondering how I responded to that. Uh, Not with anger, not with shame. I didn't tear him down. How dare you lie to me? How dare you go through this or do all this? Um, I looked at him with compassion. I was like, dude, I mean, this is really bad. This is an example of um, how out of control things are, and how lost in this belief, in this message you are. And so that was actually a good point for him and I, because we were able to kind of very quickly cut through a lot of the lies and the denial and the things that were happening. So let's go over a couple of basics here. Denial is not about truth. It's not about fact, right? It's more about survival. When someone is addicted, you just got to think about what that's like for them. And by the way, I'm not justifying their behavior. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's good. It's inappropriate. It's destructful. Yeah, it's bad, right? There's no justifying it. But we want to understand what's going on, because when we understand why they're doing what they do, then we can have a more effective approach, a more strong approach, a healthy approach. So, someone who's an addict, right, and to the extent that they've been addicted, their life has fallen apart. And they know it, right? They know they're destroying their health. They know they're destroying their relationships. They know they're destroying their jobs, and they're bringing hurt into people's lives. And they want to stop. They know that it's a problem. They've tried and they haven't been able to, and they haven't been able to find success. And that's just a horrible place to be in. And so what happens is, the longer that goes on, they start to convince themselves that, okay, maybe I am okay. Well, I'm not as bad as this person, or I'm not as bad as that, or, and they start to believe their own lies, that they really are doing okay, when clearly they're not. And there's some other components of it, right? It's also a denial of facing what they have to go through, that they're going to have to get clean, that they're going to have to change their behavior, because there's a lot of that pain. They use it to escape. They use it to mask the hurt and the traumas they've had and all these things. And so it's their coping mechanism, and they don't want to give that up. So they've got to come up with something that is believable, that helps them keep their sanity. It's not healthy, but that's so much of what's going on. So if you are in a relationship with someone who is clearly falling apart, but they're telling you they're okay, well, here's what's not going to work: to get so angry and try to attack them with facts and try to attack them with truth, because that's not what's going on. Because typically what happens is, a person uh, is they want to believe that this person has it together. They want to believe that everything's going to be okay. But then they fall into justifying the behaviors. They actually become kind of an enabler, right? And that goes hand in hand with someone who's denying. An enabler is someone who wants to believe that this time it's going to be okay. They really do have it under control, but that's not the case. And so the enabler, they get hurt, they get burnt over and over, and then they get upset. They're angry, and they attack with anger, like, how dare you, and all these things, which is true and understandable. But what that does to the addict is, they go to more shame. All they hear is, I'm a disappointment, and I don't want to face it, and I'm screwing up. And they just get more and more shame put on them. And what do? What do they do when they're in pain? What does an addict do when they're in all that shame? How do they escape it? They use again, right? They go back to it. So it doesn't work. In fact, that confrontation is often the catalyst for them to dig even further into their denial and their shame and their pain. It's so much the reason why we tell people many times. I tell clients, like, you are emotionally wrapped up in this with this addicted person. So you're not the person that is going to be able to confront them. You're not the person that's going to be able to work on this like a therapist would or a support group would or that type of thing, because they can't have that conversation with you without going into that really deep shame place, or at least not with some guidance. Um, so it's that idea that a lot of people who love an addicted person, they feel like I can make them change. I can do this. But the harder they try, the more they try, the more it falls apart because they're wrapped up in it. And that's why we say you got to focus on that person needs help, and you're not the person to give them that help. You want to guide them to that. You want to encourage them to go to that help. Um, and there are uh, there are a lot of questions here. So let me look at some of this. So I have someone who is asking about porn addiction. Very similar. It's different kind of chemical, right? It's what we call a behavioral addiction, right? You're not putting a chemical in your body, but the behavior, looking at porn and all of that creates a dopamine rush. The chemicals are created in a different way in your brain, and that's an addictive process. And so, and denial very much exists with that. I've worked with many porn addicts and people struggling with porn, and it's the same type of deal. Like, nope, I've got it under control. Well, at least I'm not like that guy, or at least I'm not looking at it this much, or they have all these justifications and why it's okay and everything's fine, when they're not looking at the fact that their relationships are getting wrecked. They don't have the same level of intimacy. They're not able to connect anymore. And all the other ways that it is impacting their life. They don't want to look at that. They have excuses and denial and um, all their reasons. And so any type of addiction uh, is going to have some level of denial to it, some level of I don't want to face this, I don't want to admit how things are really going bad. And that secrecy increases uh, the whole problem, right? Because shame thrives in secrecy. I don't want to talk about it, don't want to deal with it, and other people aren't going to talk about it with me, and then it continues. So that is that is a big part of the cycle. So if you are in that relationship with someone who is struggling with an addiction, your focus needs to be on what you control, which is what is healthy, what is right in your relationship. I wanted to read a question that someone wrote me earlier this week, and their comment was, "Hey, Jonathan, I watched one of your videos. So relatable, except what if the user has no remorse at all and believes they have control? And asking them to stop is like asking you to stop drinking coffee. How do you walk away from them?" That was their comment. And I really liked that comment because one, it was vulnerable, it was real, and I appreciate that person opening up. But secondly, they were speaking to denial, right? Their person that they cared about who's like, everything's fine, I'm in control, when obviously that's not the problem, or that's not the truth. That they really do have a problem, and they're falling into that. So that's the denial part. And then the other part of the question, if you caught that, how do you walk away from them? See, that describes the pattern that you see with so many relationships with addiction, right? Is I don't know how to talk to them about this. I don't know how to address what's really happening. So I just hope it gets better, or I go along with it, or something like that until they're burnt. It's so crazy. It's so out of reality that they get hurt, they get burnt, and they're like, this is crazy. And then they say, okay, I can't take it anymore. I'm walking away. But then they get scared. What if this person's going to go homeless? What if they're going to hurt themselves? What if they're going to overdose? And then they get pulled back in. And then they hope things are going to get better because the person's telling them they're in control, but clearly that's not the case. And then it happens over and over. And then like, okay, I'm out of here. I got to walk away. And so what we want is we want for that person to get help. And if we keep going along with the pattern, they don't have a need to. They can stay in that addiction. So we want to speak more about truth. We want to have statements um, like I care about you, I love you, but I can't live like this. I can't do this anymore. I want you to be in my life. I want you to be in a relationship with me, but this is what that relationship has to look like. So it's not as much walking away as it is setting that boundary. And yes, that person might walk away. They might not make changes. They might do that kind of stuff. But as long as they're in this pattern where they can live in their denial, then they will likely continue. So I know that's leaving a lot of questions, and I'm happy to talk about that. But that's a long topic, right? But I wanted to mainly focus in on addiction and the denial aspect of it and why that's happening and how you need to make a move to set boundaries. So we will talk more about that later. Let me just scroll through these and I'll just stay on here, and I can always trim this excess out of these videos for the replay people. Um, yeah, so a lot of haze and highs and stuff. So I appreciate that. Um, Anyone have any questions? Anyone want to ask a question about someone in their life that has lied about something that is obviously not true? They've told you in some way that things are okay, but you don't think they're okay. You know they're not okay. Because that happens, right? It happens in um, well, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense in any existence, right? We don't want to deal with what is really happening. We don't want to face what is uh, what we're really doing. We don't want to face the pain. We don't want to face the hurt. So it makes sense that would happen. All right. I'm just going to chill out here a little bit and oh wait, let me see here. I've noticed that when you are on here, sometimes what we're talking about is pretty sensitive topics. People will say things like porn or abuse or addiction, and YouTube will filter that out. Um, and will say this is inappropriate. And so sometimes I can click on it and show the message. Other times, um, uh, will I can't see it. So, and I see some of those, and sometimes I see them afterwards. I'm like, oh, that was actually a really good question, but it had like the buzzword that YouTube um, cuts out, and that's unfortunate because there's a lot of people talking about very inappropriate things online, and I'm glad that stuff gets filtered out. But then when you really try to have a real conversation online about what people are dealing with, and then it gets flagged, but hey, we'll deal with it. Um, all right. Well, uh, that is about it. We were just talking about denial. If you're catching on, or in just relationships and denial, when people are lying to you, they're lying to you, but they're saying everything's fine, everything's in control. So that's what we're going to leave it at. Thank you for tuning in. And for anyone else, I will be doing this more regularly. If you want to subscribe to my channel, I have a whole playlist about addictions, and some of them are titled Why Addicts Lie to the Ones They Love, Why Alcoholics Get So Angry. A lot of whys, right? Because that's what I find. There's a lot of people they see this behavior, this addictive behavior, and it doesn't make sense. They don't understand why someone's doing what they're doing. And we're not justifying it. We're not saying it's right. We're not saying it's okay. We're saying let's understand it so we can respond in a healthy way, so we can move towards having change in our lives. And gosh, more comments that are being scanned out because of buzzwords. And so far, I don't think they're inappropriate, but we'll do it later. So anyway, that's what we're talking about, just understanding. So feel free to, oops, I'm pressing the wrong buttons here. Feel free to check into my channel, and there's also, I've got a parenting series in there, just videos, free, they're there, about parenting, about relationships, really all kinds of relationships, but definitely more about addiction, life controlling problems, and I want you to check it out. So subscribe and tell other people about it, about the channel, and there's some resources, and I would appreciate it, and they would probably appreciate it too. All right, so I will go through this just a few more. If anyone has any other questions or comments they want to say, and and for those that were asking about porn addictions, I also have a series of videos about that, talking about porn, about how to break that habit, to understand what's going on and the impacts of it, because that is that's honestly one of the areas that concerns me quite a bit. It is so more rampant and common, and here's the deal. I don't have these theoretical, hypothetical discussions about, is it bad, is it not? You know, the people that I'm talking to, it's clearly affected their lives, right? So there's no question in my mind. I talk to guys who have so much shame and insecurity because of the years of porn usage, that they can't be intimate. They can't have, and not just like sexually intimate, but emotionally intimate with someone. They don't know how to connect, and that's just one of the many ways that you see it wreck relationships. So if you know someone who is struggling with that, or that's something that you want to know more about, check out some of those videos too, because that will be that can be eye-opening and helpful in that way as well. Alrighty, well, I am about to check out of here, so thanks for watching, and those of you watching the replay, appreciate it. Put your comments in. I will respond to them. Eventually, I'll get to them. All right. You have a good night. I will talk to you later.